Welcome to the Cell, everybody. Cool conversations with the most amazing salespeople I can find.
Laura, who thought we would find ourselves sitting in a
I know,
podcast studio?
I'm loving it. We should be out on the trails running instead.
Actually, well, again, you can join on my running podcast as well. And
Yes,
that is on the other side of it. I cannot believe this is your first time on a podcast.
Yes, yeah.
How is
I'm
that
ready.
possible?
I know, and I'm not. I'm not very shy. I love. People do say I have a voice for radio, so I guess this is my step towards that.
That's it.
The new modern version of radio.
Did you ever consider being in radio? Was that a...
No. I did a lot of public speaking since I was young.
You have?
Yeah. Like at church growing up, I was the young, middle schooler that was at the church lectern doing the readings, making my parents proud. And I think that's kind of like that set the scene for public speaking. A bunch of friends of mine are always like, how do you do that? How do you do the public speaking? And that might be reflective of why I'm so great at sales.
There you go. Honestly, most people are petrified of public speaking.
Yeah.
And I imagine we're kind of the same, even though we're different. I quite like the stage. Do you like it now as well?
I like it a lot. Although I've been trying, just recently I was at an event in Australia and I had to, I joked to one of the guys that brought me in. I said, you want me to be the MC of the day, an American in front of an Australian audience? And they said, no, they'll love it. They love having an American accent, this and that. And so then I was trying hard on figuring out what jokes to tell.
Oh my God.
So you do have to prep.
Yes.
But the most important thing about speaking is knowing what you're talking about, right? So, yeah.
Did you do a joke?
Yeah, I did. I cracked a joke about tariffs. So it was fitting.
Everybody, we're recording this right in the middle of tariffs.
Yeah.
Did it go over well?
Yeah, it did. It went really well. And then I got a lot of great feedback just around how I knew a lot of the content that we were covering throughout the day, as opposed to maybe a general radio host that is just there to introduce people. So
I remember growing up thinking,
really fun.
Wouldn't it be wild to be on the radio?
Yeah.
I remember
we used to do radio shows, my sister and I.
You did?
Like commercials with the cassette tapes where we would record our voices and then pause and then we'd move to a commercial. Do you remember
was the commercial?
car? Do you remember Geo cars?
I did.
It was like we used to have a whole jingle and everything. Maybe it wasn't even really a car. It just ingrained in my memory that we were selling Geo cars and we had a whole jingle. And
I have to say this
I have
now.
to find those tapes.
Laura was a car sales lady right in the bit. This career in sales was always.
Geo. Anyway.
Did you sell any cars?
Yeah, no, never. No. I don't think we had any subscribers of our news channel either.
Did you put it out?
We would
there?
give the tapes to our aunts and uncles and stuff. Yeah.
You have to find it.
Entrepreneurial. Yeah, I do have to find it. I'm sure they'll be somewhere.
You have to find it.
Yeah.
I mean, learning that, I didn't think we would start there. Learning that, you are always going to be in sales, right?
Yeah. I guess so. My career didn't start though in sales. It started in financial markets. I started off as a broker. So being on a desk where it was like, just trading FX. We were doing FF, non-deliverable forwards, about that kind of stuff.
I do.
And they wanted personalities. They wanted someone that would able to be, a bit tough on some of the clients, but then also you swoon them in a way that was like, okay, actually, I like this person. I'm going to give them a call and try and give them some business. And I was pretty good at it. I was a good broker, but at the same time, whenever I met clients, I was always interested in other parts of their business. And I also felt when I was broking and involved in trading, there was kind of, you wake up every day, you tighten a spread or you trade, and then you just keep doing that the next day. There was no end goal in sight, no accomplishment which was, oh, hey, all right, I see that client over there, they're using my solution. Or you see that project, we finished that. That took us all 5 months to work together and deliver that. I felt that maybe coming out of university, it was like, hey, I did all that at school, and now I'm just rotating my day over and over.
It's transactional, right? That trading desk thing is
exactly
super transactional.
Whereas I guess I was looking for like bigger transactions. So
you were in Wall Street, like you started.
Yeah. So then I moved from broking into electronic trading of U.S. Treasury bonds. So which was basically an interesting place to be because that business and too, the money makers are the ones that are doing all the trading. But there was evolution or a revolution around technology, right?
Yeah.
So they needed people that knew the core business, but then we're trying to push people towards this new way forward, right? And that was so I was selling trading platforms to some of the most difficult, challenging. I was 22 years old talking to 10-year, 20-year bond traders at UBS, Goldman Sachs, or whatever, and mostly men. So I would always walk the trading floor, talk to them about what they're doing. And they would sometimes we would be called like the screen kids or the screen girls. Get them over. God. We need help with our screen. And then, I'd ask them it was a very interesting time. So that was the beginning of my sales career, I'd say.
I was going to ask. So I've worked on a trading desk. It's pretty male dominated. Well, it's not pretty. Back then it was very male dominated.
Yeah, for sure.
Back then. Yeah. How was that? Because you're right. Like there's not always the best, I'm going to say behaviors, but
no. I mean, my sister, who's also in the business, and a bunch of women I used to work with, we always say we could write a lot of books about the stuff that we've heard, but we don't want to.
You probably shouldn't write.
But no, I think what it came down to, and it still is today, I mentor a lot of women in sales. I'm very involved with some advocacy groups, et cetera, is sticking to, honestly, kind of just not even really making a point about that situation,
of course,
right? Because I grew up in that male-dominated field. I don't even notice until once in a while I'm sitting in a big room full of men and executives or whatever, and I'm like, why? I'm the only woman in here, and then I'm like, all right, well then let's make sure that I get noticed and things
100%.
and I make an impact in this meeting, and then make sure that the next meeting there's some diversity there. But I'd say growing up on the trading floor as a female, of course, there's different nuances you'd have to be aware of, et cetera. But all of it really came down to, is Laura going to give me what I need to help make my day better, help make me more money,
100%.
Or make my day, make my everything more efficient. And once I proved that that's what I was able to do for those clients, they would accept my calls again. They would make sure that I was always on the floor every Unemployment Friday to be there. Oh, we're going to need you in case there's a problem.
You mean when the employment figures came out?
When the figures came out, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was being that reliable source, really. Yeah, it took a bit of time, of course, but that's the core of it. Male, female, whatever color you are, race, it's, do you know your stuff? Are you able to answer the questions to me? And do I want to be around you? That's the other factor, right? There's some salespeople that maybe a client or a user, they just don't like that person.
I know.
And, there is a likability factor that you have to be mindful of.
I mean, this idea, you buy from people you like and trust.
Right.
You had this. Yeah. You had to be. I mean, I remember sitting on the trading floor, and I was surprisingly quite shy growing up. And when I started on the trading floor, I was like, oh, sorry to interrupt. And you won't get noticed.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't get noticed unless you put it there. So after Wall Street, because then we can go through everything you've done, but you moved into technology.
Yeah, well, so I moved to Singapore in 2005. Which was only 3 years out of university. Moved to Singapore for personal reasons and also career.
Sure.
It's like, hey, if it doesn't work out with this guy, at least I'll get a job in Asia and see where that goes.
That's it.
20 years later.
Still worked out with this guy.
Yeah. We just celebrated our 20 years last weekend.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, and so that electronic trading, data around derivatives and FX was a good path to be on. And I actually... But that firm I was at was quite a big global institution. And I started building up a network when I first got to Singapore, which a few people noticed who I was. Again, there weren't a lot of females selling to banks or institutional buy sides. And I was approached by a smaller startup, which was at Tora Trading, and I established my brand as Laura from Tora. But anyway.
I think that's when I first met you. I'm like, is this... Did she change her name?
2007, 2008.
Yeah. Was there any point when you were applying for that job you knew that it would be Laura from Tora?
No, not at all. No. Yeah, and but that was an interesting move, and this is something maybe throughout my career when I tell my story, I've worked at smaller organizations, where you're employee number one.
Yeah,
I've been employee number one in region.
Yeah.
I've done that 3 times. And then I've worked at large multi-billion-dollar organizations where I walk out on the floor. Exactly, at a Refinitiv where you're kind of like introduced to people and you go, wait, you do that. But doesn't that person do that as well? And then, whereas at a smaller organization, like especially when I went over the first group, you're all hands on deck. Yeah, it's a sales role, but I'm an account executive, I'm a hunter, I'm collaborating with client success, and you have to be so invested in client service. How are they looked after? And not just the help desk taking care of tickets. It's the deeper aspect of how this is all software we're talking about, really.
Yeah, of course.
How those are implemented, et cetera. Yeah, so employee number one for a few groups. I loved it. It's awesome. Establish the brand. And that brand name stuck, I think, because of that too. Hey.
When you had this idea of network. So today, both of us have network in Asia. You remember, or do you remember the first time you actually kind of almost, it's not obvious when you start to build that, but when I remember meeting like a CEO one time, I was like, oh, I was 20 something and you meet a CEO. And at the time I was so excited to meet an important person.
Right.
Today, I believe no one's important. Humans are just humans, And then I remember taking this name card, putting it down. And then I got another one.
Right.
And someone said to me, you keep those name cards now. Do you remember like when you started at it?
Yeah, for sure. Especially when it's someone that you've like heard about, or, you maybe got a tip, when you go in and meet Ned, make sure you don't touch this or talk about this, and then in the end, you didn't need any of that. You just became yourself to an extent. I'd say what I always did was, and still do, is of course, keep those cards, but make note, do your research before you go in.
Yeah.
Understand, what have you heard? What do you learn, et cetera. But make your own decision on like, is that of value to this person, or how can I play my strength? For me, as an example, like as a female in Asia, whenever I'd meet Asian executives, so up in Malaysia or in Thailand, I'd meet with a lot of the pension funds and executives of those funds. And it's very easy for those folks, whether it be a male or female, but usually like a white individual that's like, oh, this is just like another senior guy, salesperson that flew in from the US that's here for like 2 years. They're going to make a mess. We call them like eagles. They fly, or seagulls, sorry. Fly in, mess stuff up, and then leave.
Crap everywhere, and then leave.
But so, what I always did was, and I'd made sure that Asian pride, that those senior executives, usually growing up, they built their businesses around this great place that we all inhabit and live in. And I made sure that I made a point of, I've been here for about 10 years, and I enjoy this culture. And you kind of like sprinkle a little bit of that in there. And then they remembered me, because of course the key is I need to make sure I know everything about this person, before, after, et cetera. But the most important is that they remember you. So then when someone else calls them up, hey, have you heard about this great solution? It's like, actually, yeah, I did meet up with that person. Or I bumped into her in the elevator the other day. I did think it was weird that she was talking to me about something and it like connected. So that I do feel like elevator pitches when you bump into these executives.
100%.
You got to have your personal pitch. And then, of course, if you're working for someone, like I work with my clients now. It's one of the first few things I do. I'm like, what is your pitch? And in most cases, there's no aha or hook or like follow up or,
But it's obvious to you now, right? You have been doing this for enough years.
It takes time.
Because when I talk about sales to B2B people, they're like, oh, it takes so long. I'm like, and I always say to people, that's on you.
Yeah,
the length of time is not, of course, it's ultimately on the client. But what you're describing here is you can speed up that process by being memorable, by responding quickly, by flying up to Malaysia or Thailand, wherever, and doing it a lot to be able to do it. Isn't it fascinating that most people don't quite get it?
I think people tend to get, you're kind of like stuck in this, like, I'll just call and I'll follow the script, and they're not understanding the solution. They're not understanding like what we can do for them. It's, they're not going to understand it if you're not connecting it to like what they're dealing with today. So that is also when connecting with those senior leaders or the user base, whether it be a top down or bottom up sale. You got to connect. I like to talk about like the pain chain, okay, I'm selling chain?
Let's get into this.
What is this? You're selling to let's say, one particular user, like I'm just thinking, it's a bit financial, but like a automation around reading research reports, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's a great tool that I'm going to sell to a financial analyst.
Yep.
Are you going to go to the financial analyst and sell that? You could, sure. But do they have the budget? Do they even know what the spend is? Sometimes they don't even know what the AUM is of the group that they're
Correct.
working for. So when you work up to the top, to the CIO or a fund manager or what have you, it's, yes, this is a solution for the analyst, but that's at the bottom of the chain around providing efficiency. If that analyst is unable to, you think, what is that person hired, measured, and fired for based on, right? So they're hired to deliver insights and new ideas, et cetera. They're measured on how good are those ideas. They're fired on if they just don't do anything or they miss something, right? Miss something big. You work up the chain. What happens if that guy messes up in one of his elements that they're measured on? They work up the chain. That's going to impact maybe the portfolio amount. And this is just an example. Onwards, upwards, upwards. So doing those deals, I like to think, and especially when I'm meeting different people at a client, okay, where do they fit in on the pain chain? Is their pain going to be powerful enough to trickle down to all of those other business groups or business users? And if it is, then are we talking to all of those other people who are stakeholders? But usually some people would just we're just talking to them. And we never thought about all those other guys. The tough thing is you don't think about all those other guys. You've got competitors swooning into them, maybe because they're making the same mistake, talking to only one user, or vice versa.
You have to start a sales course. You have to write a book called The Pain Chain.
Some of that is from some sales courses over the years. Yeah, it's great though, because that identification of all of those players and stakeholders and the influence that they have on a purchase is core in my mind to B2B sales. And the network, keep saying that, understanding those folks. I've won some of my biggest deals just by like one individual was at a big event. I love a party.
We're going to talk about events.
Party.
We're going to talk about events.
Yeah, I'm at an event, and it's like, oh, you work there. Oh, great. Oh, I'm actually, just casually. Oh, I just had a meeting there. I was just in your office on Friday. No way. And then grab a coffee the next day. It would mean a lot if you actually showed up to would you mind spending half an hour coming to my meeting or just bumping into us in the hallway? And they'll do it, and that's influence. That was one of the biggest, because this guy is super, super senior.
Yeah.
And we were there for a pitch. And I remember I said, I'm going to be over there around 9:30.
Yeah.
And we're waiting in the waiting room just as the person that I was meeting showed up to receive us. This individual came in. And the guy who was receiving us was like, because in some cases he was so senior. He's like, oh, you know Laura? Yeah.
And you're like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It helps. All of these little tactics.
But this is the bit in essence, it's not that you have to, when you start your career, you need to think about that stuff. Today, at events, you're great at events.
Thank you.
You understand, because you go to an event and you understand that is a room of opportunity. And you combine your network, because at an event, it's clear people know you. And it makes it easier for other people to go, oh, well, she must be, I hate the word somebody, but you know what I mean? You're there. People understand it. People know it, because sometimes events can seem a bit old-fashioned in this new digital world and age, but in reality, it's still super important.
Well, it's still a means to connect with people.
Yeah.
Right? And I love connecting people and staying connected. My mother always said, you're so good at that. The guy where I worked for in my college internship junior year, he's now long retired. I still stay in touch. This is what I'm working on. And they like that. It's connecting. Anyway, so working a room and being aware of kind of like the dynamics in the room, of course, who others are talking to, who do you see some friendly faces with. It's like politics, right? You got to work the room. But then also being mindful of, if I connect someone to the right person, they're going to, really should be paying that back to me. One day it'll come back to me.
Sales karma.
In a positive way. I love it.
Sales karma.
Sales karma.
Some advice. We get, sometimes listening to this show, we get some, my daughter is starting in sales. She's 24.
Yeah.
You said working a room.
Working a room.
What is the when you're new to the business? What are some of the tips? Because
Okay, yeah, that's great.
I've today, without both of us having an ego, either of us could walk into a room. In our industry, we could walk in and just be fine. But I'm pretty comfortable. You put me in a room full of a dental conference. I don't know anything about dental conference, but I guarantee I can work a room just
Right.
because we know
Yeah, of course.
how to do it.
And also, we have a personality just inherently.
You've
to
done
an
it
extent.
enough.
Yeah.
But for the people who are starting, they turn up to
Yeah.
an event. Any guidance tips you would say?
So yeah, and I'd say like just from coaching some of my staff over the years, like I've seen folks that are just not into it or not ready or there's a few. One I'd say I like the concept of like buddying up to an extent,
Okay.
right? So it is very difficult going to an event and you're on your own, and it's a big one and you're an individual sales rep.
your phone and your copy and you're
It's
looking
like,
up.
these are the people my boss told me I have to meet and I don't know where they are, so there's that.
Yeah.
So buddying up, whether it be with like a fellow, AE or biz
Yep.
dev or whatever, or what I always find most valuable is buddying up with another actual important person, that somebody else, a lot of people want to meet.
There you
So
go.
if there's a client that, you're friends with and you kind of can go along with that person, work through them a bit, but don't hang on to that and stay buddied up the whole time. When the meetings go into the conference rooms to sit down and listen, definitely guilty of sitting with my friends sometimes, but over the years I learned, hey, I could sit next to and just like after the meeting, it's like, hey, what did you think of that? And after the seminar or what have you. So breaking out from that buddy or that group is important. And then at the same time goes hand in hand, like don't stand in the corner of the room, go to the lunch, talk to people in the lunch line. And most people, we were just talking about this, it's the same with like a buyer and a deal. The people that you want to talk to are also there, like kind of, they're maybe a little bit like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm just here to learn some stuff. So I don't want to be sold to as well. Like that's the biggest. I kind of felt that, or I was just at an event a couple of months ago. I think you were there and there were some guys in from the US and I knew who they were and I wanted to meet them because, and yeah, we ended up talking actually on the food line just by chance, and we just talked, how's Singapore? What do you think about this and that? And then later in the day, you got to revisit that person. You got to work the room, you got to keep kind of showing up.
I love this idea. You bumped into each other in the food line by chance.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Laura's by chance.
I'd
It's
say
like,
that.
oh, look.
Yeah. I remember how they used to have those, like, I don't know if they still, like you'd get a prize. Remember like at the Fix conference?
Yes.
If you went to every booth,
Yeah. Oh my
you
God.
would get a stamp and then you'd get a lucky draw ticket to win an iPad, of which I won twice. Two years in a row.
You are the two-time winner.
But because I went to all the booths. Anyway.
But your point is clear. I love this idea. You have to increase your surface area of luck.
Yeah.
I love this idea. If you stand in the corner, like you're not going to sell any shit. Like nobody's going to talk to you.
Yeah.
And yes, is it sometimes icky? Does it sometimes feel hard to just walk up to somebody and go, "Hi, I'm Laura. I'm Ned. Hello." It is.
Yeah,
but it's never as bad as you imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like they're never gonna go. The worst someone could do is like, "Oh, hey, oh, yeah," and then walk away. But and if that happens, you'll find another way to bump into them. Or and I think too the thing with sales and like people going to events and thinking sales. You're not going to close a deal that day,
not.
right?
Of
You
course.
could meet some really great leads, but as long as you just have you kind of, I find it kind of goes to that elevator pitch, like just high level kind of, this is what we're working on. Love to get your thoughts on it. Let's have a coffee, another day. It's not like here's some pamphlets and like log into our thing and you can see our demo and this and that. It's got to be that like sprinkle a little bit on and they'll remember and then you get their details and you call them back.
I love to describe sales as theater sometimes. It's like a performance. It's like a play. You have
I know.
To drift in, you have to know your part. You
Well,
drift in,
yeah.
drift out,
Yeah.
go here. go back.
Sometimes it does feel like a real play when there's like the RFPs and proof of concepts, and you're all there. And anyway.
Anyway, I just have to quickly tell you my, Kent Rossiter, obviously.
Yeah.
At the very beginning of my career, I was trying to win. It was the huge account alliance, and I pitched him in a room, but he was brand new and I was new, and we were just in the same room, but the bosses were talking. And then it was like 25 years ago. It was on he lived in Discovery Bay. So, for people listening, that was a ferry ride home. And I walk on and he's sitting there by himself. And I remember walking down, so I'm like, do I just plop myself beside him as if by accident, on purpose? What do I do? Because I was super nervous because he was like head trader. And I'm like, just going to do it. So I just tiddly-dee. Hello, remember me? And you can see him, he's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I got to sit next to this guy.
He's like, oh my God, a broker in my face.
Yeah, but it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't.
In the end. And in the end, that guy was a really reliable business partner of yours for a
we're
long
close
time. Client, yeah.
Wow, and we're super close. We're super close friends.
Oh, that's great.
To be able to do it.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is like self-awareness. We talked about likability.
Yeah.
But, being self-aware around maybe this isn't the right person I should be talking to. And that goes into the team play as well, right? If you're in a team of salespeople or ideally smaller teams, you can recognize like this account's in my territory as an example, but you know what? I've tried and there's like, this just isn't going to work. Like this guy either we don't mesh well in any capacity. And I've worked the rest of the group and I can do that. But I need someone else to help me and partner with that. So being self-aware in that capacity, and that goes too with like the understanding the timeliness of the approach, whether it be the call or the ferry or whatever, if it was a really bad day in the markets that day and you, like a couple days ago and you sat next to Kent, probably not really awesome.
Well, actually, to be fair, I had done my research in the 1997 stock market, or 98, crash, which was, the first, well, not the first, but a big crash in Asia. It just so happened Kent used to live in Japan, and the Far Eastern Economic Review magazine had just per chance decided to do a week's coverage of his firm, Nikko Securities, and of him. And he got a center spread as the panic unfolded. So I'm like, oh, I just happened to be reading.
Oh my goodness.
You're famous. I saw you in a magazine. He's like, did you really just do that on purpose? I'm like, I did. And
there's no shame in that either. So that's the other thing, it's, man, you're good at this. Sometimes I've had some people, they'll go, wow, you do really, you don't hold back. And that's okay. When you really need something and all these little tactics we just talked about aren't working, you go right up to the person. Hey, I've been trying to find you all day. I need to talk to you about this. So on and so forth. Yeah.
It's the way to do it. You said that you have been at 3 firms when you're the first person, right?
First person in Asia.
I get it.
And with one of them was, it was like, the second salesperson. Which
do you,
globally.
For a lot of people, that would be scary as hell. It's easier to embed into a big team. Did you purposefully not want a big team? I.e., you could go to a huge investment bank and be one of many, or so was it per chance, or was that always how you like to do it?
The first was definitely by chance, but then what I did was I liked to an extent, the control of it. And a bit of there's seniority when you are at that level of like, okay, we're hiring a director to set up our business.
I love this idea. I'm head of sales in Asia. How many salespeople are there? One.
Yeah.
So I created this role.
So that's, there's that. And then the influence on the strategy, I'd say, and that's kind of where I am now after that many years of working for smaller groups and then at the bigger companies where I've influenced strategy. Now my goal is to do that for smaller organizations, no matter where they are in the world. But yeah, it's that influence of strategy and having, being that voice of, okay, this is what seems to be working. This is not what's working. And let's put out get a plan together on what our strategy is going to look like for the next 3 years, and not having too many other outside or internal influences around that. It's a very, tough role to get because the people, the founders or the executive team, they really got to trust you and they have to vet your experience level. make sure, does this person know what she's talking about, she
Yeah,
or
yeah.
he? And then also, having I really enjoy building out teams. I really enjoy identifying great talent.
Some
and
people
who
tell
doesn't?
me.
I mean,
Yeah, but then again, some people tell me managing salespeople is crazy.
yeah,
hard.
I mean, it's great. It's really great. No. I also like building out and hiring and collaborating with like the client service heads or product heads, whatever. But yeah, sales, it's tough. There's, you got to find. I was just listening to something like that, and they touched on that curiosity is so important. Like, you need rigor, no doubt, but curiosity is that they want to look deeper and they want to look more beyond maybe what we're already talking about and what we're already selling, and that reflects so positively to the buyer that like they're genuinely interested in maybe. And again, I'm talking more tech. It's very you're genuinely curious and interested in the future of how tech can be utilized at my firm as a client and a consumer. And that builds trust, but finding that is tough. There's a lot of folks that think, oh yeah, no, I'm curious. I just helped someone that, they've worked at an organization for a big firm for 10, 15 years. They were just, this other podcast I was listening to comparing like, oh, you can hire someone from Oracle. They talk really well. They've been there for 15, 20 years, but they're curious, but there's all these other factors to think about. Like you don't have a whole slew of sales engineers to help you with your pitch when you're employee number 2 on the sales team, as an example. So a lot of that has to take into consideration. And that's what I liked about being, one of the first few employees in a region. I had control over that, and really that ability to determine and build out some of the best teams that I've seen. And developing that talent is awesome. Just seeing people grow and help coach them along the way is really fun.
Honestly, when you find like a really great salesperson,
Yeah.
and you just know you're like, oh,
Yeah, it's like
this person is going to be great. The question remains, can you teach anybody to be a salesperson?
Yeah, no, I'd say you can teach people how to approach sales in different ways. And that's usually making them better. I mean, I had my last corporate role was running a specialist sales team. So these are very technical, like very financially technical specialists for deep financial analytics solutions. And the company gave them all quotas. So
just to be clear, are these salespeople?
So these are
or are they technical people who are selling?
Sales specialists, which are really technical people that were selling.
So without being unkind, they're not salespeople.
Yeah, well, I was kind of
not like
brought
me and
in.
you.
You have to, but then they're given quotas.
Wow.
It's like, oh, we got to hit numbers. We got to monitor this. What does this mean? I got to collaborate with an account manager, who's used to being just stomping the pavement, et cetera. So the element of like, can you transition those people to become sales? You can coach them to a way to become more commercial, and their commercial acumen shines through. But actually, you don't want them to become like a full-blown salesperson, because then maybe the client that doesn't like that,
doesn't want it.
Yeah. So there's a balance, and I think that's I'm seeing a lot of companies move towards that direction, where you have like solution specialists or solutions consultants, but that have revenue targets as well. So they have a vested interest in the success of that deal, as opposed to just being the person to like help explain the solution and integrate.
The thing I worry about is, so I'm helping a bunch of B2B startups today. I'd love your thoughts on this. So many of them, they have these technical salespeople because they're building AI stuff. People are like, oh, my product is great. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? No one gives a shit about your product. What are you talking about? As you said, you said
how does that connect to what I'm doing?
Yeah. Are you curious? Are you interested in that person? Is it going to sell? I really worry that people, of course, the consultative sell, of course you're interested. I mean, me and you understand it. We don't walk up and go, buy my cup, buy my cup, buy my cup. We're like, oh, how you doing? You thirsty? Oh, you need a cup? Oh. So what have you been up to today that makes you, you know the deal. I don't know if I want to say I worry that there's not enough salespeople at startups these days. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, though, like advisors, a lot of people like myself, yourself, we come in to play, you know. It's that I'm working with a founder now. They have great solution. They've got too many use cases, so there's
Oh my
no
God.
focus, so that's an aspect. And what you got to explain is, or think about even founders is, when you want to get to that stage where you are hiring a sales team or a senior sales director and then a bunch of AEs, what are they selling? Is there a playbook? Are there battle cards, et cetera, and all that? And I think I know advisors like me and yourselves and others can help founders get to that, but then they do need to. And what that is a wrapper around your solution. What's your value proposition? What's the story you're going to tell? The ideal client profile, that profile of that, their buyer behaviors, so much. You could spend a whole podcast talking about that. But then it's more that execution, finding that right person that also grasps that and is able to tell the story. It does take time, but I do say with the right coaching and right advice, and also like setting up, having all that stuff, those questions answered before you hire those salespeople, all that is going to make for a good sales individual.
Okay, you can make a good sales individual. To go a bit deeper, is it nature or nurture? Were you always going to be a salesperson? Can you take someone who was not natural? I've wondered about this a lot. So I have 2 kids. I adore them both. My son is always going to be more analytical, and my daughter is always going to be the salesperson.
Yeah.
Just how it is.
Yeah.
Were you always going to be a salesperson?
Yeah, of course. I was selling cars on my radio station when I was 7 years old. No. Yeah,
So-
I'd say.
so in a funny-
Yeah, I think for sure. I'd say, or maybe also because I inherently like to help people, and I do feel like selling is you're helping someone and making money out of it too. So, and I like making money.
But that's, you see, you describe selling as helping people, but you say to many people, oh, I work in sales, and their image is
It's like, yeah, of course. I mean, it is. It's
But I wonder, why is
there's
that?
a balance.
But why is it? Why is there, as a guy, I sometimes help startups, and somebody in the startup says, I don't really want to be a salesperson. I'm like, why not? He said, well, it's a slimy dude in a suit. I'm like, A, do you see my suit? And B, am I slimy? It's like, is that it?
Yeah.
Why does our industry have such a shitty
Because there are
connotation?
those, that does still exist.
I know.
But you're definitely seeing a shift right now, of course. Like the buyers are so intelligent now. There's so much information. I mean, it's been 10, 15 years of that.
Yeah.
That they don't need you. I don't need you to tell me, like why this fabric is a little bit more unique or whatever. If I'm looking for
You can find
something,
out.
I'm going to do research and do that. So then it goes back to that. Is this salesperson, do they get really, are they curious? Do they understand? And are they smart enough to really get like what I'm trying to achieve here, or what pains I'm feeling and how that impacts my boss or the work that we're trying to achieve, et cetera. And then once you're kind of there, I think that shininess or that, sliminess would like shed away a little bit. Okay, actually, again, they're genuinely like trying to help solve a problem here. I'd say like some of one of the best deals I've done, many of the best ones were like you genuinely helped us here. Like you got us out of a hole and we weren't really sure where we were going or how to get out of it. And instead of just pushing something and flogging that product to us or that solution, yes, it took a bit longer because you were like guiding as a consultative sale, but that means a lot more. And now I'm going to stick with you a lot more. It's usually a bigger contract size. There's a little bit more joy around the partnership. There's a lot more collaboratization, like between the two guys, understanding of the two sides, as opposed to like, you sold me this, you need to implement it. I'm not giving you any more resources. You can see the difference in the deal based on the perception. I would say one of the key perceptions is like of that salesperson, how they approached it.
I hadn't thought about this. I love this. So in the end of the day, your quality as a salesperson is even more important, because if you're selling these coffee cups, people can go and Google it and find out how much they cost and exactly what it is. It's, do they like you more or the other person more? have you put more effort
I mean,
in?
of course, the product does make a
No,
difference.
but if we're all selling the same.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes.
What I
yeah.
mean is, it's a good point. In
Yeah.
that sales actually has to become better. Whereas, when you were trying to sell cars on your tape, people couldn't Google the cars. You were literally giving them information.
Right.
Because they couldn't access it.
Yeah.
So I used to sell floppy disks back in the day, and I would turn up and go, I have a product that you want, and here's the features of my product, because no one else had floppy disks.
Yeah.
Whereas today, people don't have floppy disks, but they can find out everything. Now, what I want to do is, you will be buying that. Oh, I know you need that. It's that, why are we buying it? How can I help? It's a really good point, because salespeople have to get better.
Right. Or the story, like they have to tell a story. So, and that story has to connect to the value. So the value is, is the story, did this solution make another client more profitable? Or did it help with someone's reputation, in the past? Or did you hear about that? That they were struggling and we were able to fix this and they ended up winning this award or whatever, telling that kind of story. There's a couple other key components when it comes to value, and like connecting that value in the story you're going to tell is quite helpful. But I do think, telling a story about like the journey that you can take a client on by when they take on your solution.
I love
And it takes time though to plan that out. There's actually some really great materials out there that help around, different story arcs. You can talk about pain. We talk about. I tend to harness on pain. I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, there's so many. But I also feel that storytelling is quite important, and integrating that into your pitch continuously, right? Okay, 3 months later, hey Ned, remember when we were talking? Oh, actually, I reconnected with that, and this is where they are now. Or, or you were telling me a while ago it's going to take you, 40 hours to accomplish this task. Did something change? And then get them back on track around that journey that you all agreed you were going to go on when they buy your solution. So.
You mentioned buyer behavior early on. You said we could do a whole podcast on that. I love that. So I'm determined to do. I do a bunch of videos. I love this idea of the first 5 or 10 minutes of a meeting when you're almost setting that behavior. I always worry when I see a salesperson come in. They're like, "Hello, my name is Ned. Let me pitch you my product." I'm like, "Dude, you haven't learned anything about their behavior."
Yeah.
I mean, what's your thoughts on it? Because I always think that in the end of the day, like, you can be you, I can be me, but in the essence, we're trying to figure out their behavior.
Yeah, totally. So there's the research aspect of that, but that could totally go flop on its head when you go in and you actually meet the person from a behavioral perspective, personality and behaviors. Sure. That art of the questioning, is important. And then, but the art, to me, there's questioning and then there's art around that. So you might be ready to, walk in and we want to understand XYZ about that client. We're going to do that through conversational questioning. But if you're faced, there's a certain behavioral change that you weren't expecting, you've got to be able to pivot and be on your toes around, like, let's take these questions somewhere else. Or maybe I'm going to talk a little bit more, or be upfront around, like, and usually the behavior some salespeople challenge the most with is naturally, if it's even talking to your teenage daughter, is that abrasiveness, right? Or like, standoffish,
sure.
Or like, I got no time, just look at my phone. Yes, no, those yes, no question or answers, etc. So I'd say it's being ready and practicing that stuff. The role plays is so important. A lot of young salespeople are hesitant to do that, whether it be in an open floor or in a private meeting room. But you've got to create an open, safe space, and then eventually set them up to see that there really is value in doing those exercises. I think also I encourage like recording meetings. It is very difficult to do sometimes, but nowadays not really, because every AI, especially the web meetings, those are awesome. Like understanding the sentiment, but replaying those meetings. And, I didn't notice the physical, the body language and what happened there.
Exactly.
Or when that person kind of started taking notes, what was it that tricked, that clicked with them? I was just in a meeting this morning, and I was observing a pitch of a client of mine, and I after the meeting, I called him and I said, did you feel that, when so and so like started one of the key stakeholders?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, he didn't notice.
I was in
it.
flow.
Yeah, he was in flow. He didn't notice it, and it's like, okay. Let's go back. Now we're going to double down on that topic with that one individual stakeholder and keep it as like a factor on top, because you can see, hey, that like something clicked there. And that's behavioral. So,
But isn't it fascinating that you can see it?
Well,
After your 20 years or whatever
right.
career, like you see it.
Yeah.
It's
And
screaming.
it's fun when you see it. Yeah.
Isn't it? You can see it, you can feel it, you know it. And I think it's a combination of you're a salesperson, but also you've done this for 20 years. You just know it. It's like anything you do for so long. You're right. You watch other people and you can just feel like that just changed.
Well, it's kind of like at a dinner party, I mean, socializing in any way. It's like, oh, don't bring that up.
I watch a ton of reality TV. I know I shouldn't.
Oh, wow.
I know I watch.
Wow, I wouldn't take you as I don't. I do not at all. It's so like non-American of me.
It's very
But
non-American of you. I recommend you watch it all the time. But the reason I mentioned I watched, shame on me, but I watched Married at First Sight. Which
right.
You know what that is,
I
right?
understand the premise.
It's pretty obvious in the title, but it's really a fascinating kind of sales behavior because the two of them are both selling to each other because they're getting married at first sight.
Wild.
And it's wild to watch because it's these social cues. It's these, one person's talking too much and one person's not talking enough, or the other person's not listening. And I just like watching crap on TV, so let's be clear. But I'll dress it up
You
as a...
decompress.
I
It's
know.
your way. Yeah.
I dress it up as sales. But in essence, I actually think there could be a great reality sales TV show out there because that buyer behavior, when you sit in a meeting and sometimes when you had a meeting and you walk in and you just got it. That person's into you.
Yeah, I mean, I probably know more of that or the other way, but yeah.
But what I mean is they're
it's
into
great.
what you're saying. They get it. They're like, this person's awesome. What a great salesperson. You get that sense that, oh my God,
They're in it.
they're in. We got that, which you can just feel it when it
Yeah.
flows, right?
Well, what also is awesome when you're selling is, I call it like the dance when you're with a partner. So I always, as a lead, would have a solutions consultant or a sales engineer when we get to like that second, third meeting. And then when you walk out of that meeting and it was just perfect. It was like the waltz maybe, I don't know what it would be, where there's 4 people dancing and everyone just went, oh, it's the best. It's the best feeling.
I had a sales guy I worked with, and we had each other's jokes. He knew he would like launch me into it. He'd be like, "Oh, so what about?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's funny. You should mention that." For the 500th time, we've done this joke. Pivoting a little bit, you are now, I'm going to say, out on your own.
Yeah.
Doing your own thing. How is that? How does that feel?
Yeah, it's great. So I kind of made this decision to move out on my own. I worked up the ladder, spent a lot of time doing that.
You have,
got up there.
We didn't get too much into your career, but you've worked at some great firms.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, fantastic groups. And again, like as I say, moved up quite senior roles, which was always a goal of mine. And like I said, I love developing talent and being a senior stakeholder and influencer. But at some point I kind of missed that. I was always like, what's happening over there? What meeting? Did you come back from a meeting? What did you guys talk about? How did it go?
Exactly. I want to go and sell.
Do you want to coach? Do you want to walk through what happened? Or can I watch the video? And so, so I thought of ways, there's a lot of organizations out there that are maybe looking to dip their toes into new regions or new client segments or what have you. And we just touched on it. They're maybe not ready to hire a big sales organization, or they have done so and it's not really working out. And they're not at a point where they can hire a full-time senior executive. So I come in as a fractional leader, but also an advisor to help figure out, everywhere from, like I said, we have a great solution here. It seems to be working for about 5-6 different verticals. We don't know how to tell a story for each one of those verticals or tell a good story that solidifies and attracts more investors, all the way down to my team, my pipeline has stagnated. What's going on? Can you just come in for 3 months and I've done that where, yeah, you go in and they've got all the tools, all the resources, but there's no diligence, no oversight around putting in meeting notes or following up. So it's that kind of stuff. Yeah.
We'll come to carry on in your business in a minute. Isn't it wild when you see a business and they're like, we can't work out what's going on. We don't have any sales. And you go and have a look and the CRM's not working. The follow-up's not working.
Yeah,
the pitch deck sucks. And you're like, guys, your basic tools are not right. And honestly, I worry it's a lot of firms.
Yeah, a lot. And when there's so much out there around revenue operations and KPIs around diligence and stuff like that, and easy tools to implement and set up. It's a there's a cultural thing there, particularly. I find that, you hire someone that's a senior sales that's been at a big firm. He had 5 people do that for him, take notes or whatever. There is that. Or like, I got it. I know all the clients. Sometimes I'm guilty of it. My Rolodex of clients, I'm like, oh, I got to update my CRM. Where in the old days, I would just, every call, I'd put it in there. And so, I'd say there's cultural, and then just seeing the results, by putting in meeting notes and data, feedback on product, and having the right process around distributing that out to the executives, but the product team, the service support team, that influences not only your roadmap, but like what direction you're really going in, and that will help you scale from a revenue and overall growth perspective. So, but I think some groups need to see that, oh wow, that works. I had one client. I asked the sales and support team. I'm like, so how often do you guys talk with the product managers? Never. How often do they get to see the notes and the call notes? Well, there are no call notes. So then how does a product team... No. So then the product team is not connected to the clients or how are they even connected to the market? So there's a lot of great tools you can put in place and processes.
But I think for a lot of people, they just don't know it. It is hard to know. How does it feel to... You are now what's the right terminology? A founder, a solopreneur?
Yeah, I guess,
your own. How does that feel?
I put founder on the card, or I'm a sole director. Yeah, it's been great. I'm loving, the control and the power of really looking out for business that I'm really interested in doing. Collaborating with people that maybe in the past I never really had time or, was too busy doing. So my network has really kind of paid back in that way of reaching out to so many people. And it's like, oh, why didn't you do this years ago? Or let's bring you into this, or you can help me. Maybe I don't have a job for you now, but I actually need your help with something else. And it's been really fun.
I think it's honestly, Laura, I think it's the absolute future. Me and you could go get a corporate job. We could.
Right.
You could.
Yeah.
You've built an amazing reputation here.
Thank you.
But the reality is, if I was a new firm coming into Asia in trading technology or anything like that, and I'm like, I'm not sure if I want a business, if I want to set up a whole business and take the chance of hiring somebody, this new fractional way, it is the way. Yeah. Like, I think you've come into it. I mean, I'm a year into it. I think we've come into it because not only do you have expertise, but you have the network.
Yeah. And that outside view is so valuable and kind of like, I don't know, if I've been in senior roles talking to my CEOs and founders, and you can try and set them in your place or tell them you're making the wrong move here, but delicately. And usually they won't listen. And I find as an external advisor, which eventually subsequently I'd hope you become a board advisor and a board member, you're able to just say, listen, Ned, like this is just not working. Don't waste your time in that segment. Let's focus on this. And these are the reasons why, because the XYZ. And so also the other factor that I'm loving is that, as I said, connecting. So, part of what I do is when it comes to value proposition and narrative and is this the right direction to go in for a client or a segment, is setting them up with people to talk to. And what's great is I can go in and go, all right, let's set up a demo. We'll get some feedback. Like the meeting today, I'll call back that guy in the afternoon and go, what did you think for real? Was the story the guy telling you was it a waste of your time? Or were there a few elements of that meeting that you really piqued your interest? I noticed that this is when it piqued your interest. Would you double down on that topic? with other types of clients like yourselves. So being that independent consultant or
true.
advisor,
So
you have a
true.
lot of sway there, and I love that
Isn't
stuff
it
too.
what? And I agree. You can,
And you're not selling,
Correct.
You know, like, which is also cool too.
but you're not selling, but you are, because they trust your opinion. You're
Right.
not selling, but isn't it great? I agree. The
Yeah.
value you can provide now is you just say it as it is.
Yeah.
You're like, either that was great,
And
that was an
people
amazing,
need that now.
or
It's so competitive.
correct, or guys, that was not a story. So
Yeah.
we recorded someone's call the other day. They spoke for 94% of the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, you know me, I'm a polite person. You're a nice person, whatever, you know. But sometimes I'm like, dude, that was terrible.
Yeah.
You can't speak. Not even, and you know, I always feel bad telling people not to speak too much. You like talking. I like talking. We could talk all day. Holy shit. But the point is, and so I played it back to him. And I watched,
yeah.
he was like,
Oh, yes. That's, you know.
but that's what you're there for. You can
Yeah,
now
so good.
sit there and say, this
Yeah.
so I'm going to ask you an impossible question. Would you ever go back to corporate, or is this your founder solopreneur?
It would really depend on the tech, where that company is
Sure.
in its stage. I'd say I would not go back to a large
Just another
established
sales role.
organization. And,
Yeah.
you know, that works for some people. I'm at a point in my life where I've got to love what I'm doing to get up and, you know, take time away from my family and my personal life and well-being and all of that.
Yeah.
And so if I don't feel that positivity and interest in where I'm working and the tech and the impact that tech is going to make on the future and the story I tell to even my kids, you know, when I was working at that geospatial analytics
I remember.
firm,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
And there was a time where my kids would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd show them, and it was like, "That is so awesome!" And
Look
then
at
you
you.
connect it to like something that they're experiencing every day. And some stuff out there is more traditional. It's hard to do that, right? And of course, it's a bit of a dream world that, you know, I'm painting here. But nowadays, like I said, there is a lot of great technology out there. You can find if it was the right one, I'd go
Hey,
to
look,
a senior role.
I think you made the other point that we're both salespeople, so we like money. Somebody puts the right
Yeah.
number in front of you to sell something, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have 4 minutes left. A couple of questions. Do you think or would you like? You have 2 daughters, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah.
they either want to, or would you encourage them to be sales?
To go into sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say my younger one, I would encourage. She's got the buzzy. They both have fantastic personalities,
course.
but my younger one has that energy and the leadership that you can see that someone that's like likes to listen, but then also
Yeah.
can take what they're hearing and kind of connect that to some other way that could maybe help her or what have you. But honestly, we'll see. I think everyone in one way or another is selling something, whether it be themselves or their vision or what they want to do.
And we're lucky because it's what we've done the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like we know how to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, I always finish. So we could talk about sales all day long, but we have 1 hour. I always finish. I didn't tell you this, so you don't get to prepare. I always finish with 2 completely random questions.
Okay, yes.
So before we do
Ready.
that, it is so cool to talk. So honestly,
Yeah, it's so great.
I think
It's been a while since we've sat down and chatted like this.
you know, one
Thank
time
you.
we should do a long form because there's so, like you talked about buyer behavior. There's so much in sales. Like I make these YouTube videos, and the other day I did a 2-hour one by myself in a room where I just talked to the camera. And at one point,
You are talented in that way.
At one point, I was like really excited, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's just me in a room." Like I need a. But we could talk sales all day. Okay, 2 completely random questions. If you could live forever, would you?
Oh, that's a tough one. Live forever in what state?
It's up to
Like
you. It's
at
up to
my
you.
like 40s?
It's up to you. It's up to you.
No. I think it's fair. There's a meaning as to why our lives don't last forever, and I think that's something that I should live by. Yeah.
I'll tell you something fascinating, Laura. So I've done just started on the sale, but I've done over 100 and something podcasts, and I've asked everybody that question, almost without fail. Every woman says no, and every man says yes. And almost everyone was like, they think about it. And they're like, that's not what life's about.
Right.
And almost every man goes, yeah, man, I'm going to live forever. It's going to be awesome. And then I have to
No,
think,
just make the most of the life that we have now. Yeah.
I have learned, when I first asked myself that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to live forever. And now I'm like, no. Oh my God, can you imagine? No.
It's long.
It's too long. All right.
And also, yeah. I'm good with I'd love to see what happens.
Yeah, but it's...
But we would be able to see it. That's what I believe.
I
Yeah.
know. And one last question. In this make-believe world, you only get to eat one food for the rest of your life.
Oh, wow.
What is it?
Maybe like lasagna. Gluten-free. No, if I could eat whatever. And then,
You're only allowed to
just
eat one food. I know it's not
every day.
practical and healthy.
Wow, what a wild question.
But
I'd say
assuming
like
your
a
body can
really
still
good-
carry on
Yeah, like an
functioning.
amazing. I have a few lasagnas in mind.
There
Not
you
my
go.
own, unfortunately.
There you go. Well, we'll see if we
I
can.
should have. If my mother listens to this, I'm in trouble because she doesn't make lasagna.
Oh,
She'll
no.
know that's not her dish.
Oh, no. So which of your mother's dishes would you eat?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Probably, every day though, like a pesto pasta. It's a good balance. I'm Italian, so
There you
the
go.
pastas really come out. It's in
That
my
would
blood.
keep you there.
So.
Awesome. Laura, thank you for being on the
Thank you,
show.
Ned.
We'll
So
go out
great.
and sell some more, all right?
Yeah, see you around. Thanks so much.
No worries.
It's great.